Good evening. Good evening. I just want to ask if I'm audible. Can everyone hear me? Can someone say yes, or you can just raise up your hand? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ben. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Let me welcome everyone to the monthly Red Meat Industry Services webinars, which are meant to educate the farmers and the industry participants about livestock management, which it plays a critical role in the economy of the country. So today, like any other month, we do have a special guest speaker to come and share knowledge, to share a lot of knowledge that can be instrumental in improving the livestock enterprise profitability of the farmers, particularly the livestock farmers in the country. So we have in our midst Dr. Ben Raylan. I'm sure those who are attending events, livestock events in the country, they are familiar with the name Dr. Ben Raylan. So I'm just going to read through his bio just to help those ones who don't know or who are not familiar with the name Dr. Ben Raylan as to who is this person, who is this professional. So colleagues, today we have got Dr. Ben Raylan. Dr. Ben Raylan holds a PhD degree in molecular genetics from the Department of Zoology of the University of Pretoria that was co-supervised through University of Wageningen in the Netherlands. He has got more than 27 years experience in the field of molecular genetics and 16 years as a research team manager, heading a national beef recording and improvement scheme of the Agricultural Research Council, that is ARC. His current responsibilities, which is also one of his passions, includes ensuring that the South African beef producers adopt and implement performance recording and associated technologies, which are aimed at improving the biological and economical efficiency of national herd through genetics improvement, with the ultimate aim to enhance the sustainability and the profitability of beef production in the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, and everyone else, we have got Dr. Ben Raylan today to present to you about the livestock management. Just want to read through his topic. Just want to put on his slide. Just for a second. Yes. Okay. So Dr. Ben Raylan today is going to share with us information based on the topic, how basic science and technology assist in turning cows into capital. I'm sure all the farmers, they want to make money in their livestock enterprises. So today, Dr. Ben Raylan is going to take us through on how the technology that we have in the country can assist us in turning cows into capital. So it's more like a magician. So it's going to assist you to make, so that was a joke. It's going to assist us to be able to have information in our disposal so that as farmers who are farming with livestock can be able to turn cows into capital. So Dr. Ben Raylan is from the Agricultural Research Council. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Ben Greylen to take us through his presentation. And after the presentation, we are going to take questions. If you've got questions, you can write your questions or your comments in the inbox. And then if you have got an oral question or an oral comment, you can just wait for the presentation to finish. And then thereafter, you'll have your time to ask your question or make your comment orally. So I hand it over to you, Dr. Ben Greylen. You are more than welcome to switch on your mic so that you can take us through your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ernest, can you hear me? My mic's on?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much, colleagues, and Ernest in particular, for this opportunity. And for the RMIS also, that's one of our important stakeholders in industry. That's also making a lot of contributions to take our industry forward. So it's much appreciated. So colleagues and farmers, I have many slides. I'm not going to go into all the detail of all the slides. I always do it this way. So if there's more detail, you can always have the presentation afterwards if you want to have a peek at some of the detail that I won't be touching on, because I only have about 45 minutes. And I will only focus on the essence of the talks. On the menu, thank you, Ernest. I'm going to put our agriculture and specifically our beef industry into perspective, just to sort of get the bigger scheme of things, and then a profile and contributions of our country's farmers, and then in particular, what are the challenges, but also the opportunities, because that's where science with other resources obviously can make a big difference in terms of taking the industry forward. And then focus a lot on the role and contribution of data that's turned into information and technology and how that is used in our industry. And then I'm going to take you a little bit back to the basics in terms of the genetics and the phenotype, in other words, the physical traits of our animals and the factors that affect our sustainability, and how we can how we record that and how we can use that as selection tools. Okay. And then towards the end, I'm going to tell you, because there's lots of technologies out there. We are so bombarded with technologies every day of our lives. And people often ask, so what's in it for me? So I'm going to just stand still at the towards the end at, so what's in it for me? What am I to gain if I make use of performance recording technologies and related? And then perhaps just a take-home message. Next slide, Ernest. Thank you. Okay, so just, I'm not going to go, like I said, into everything, just to put our agriculture and livestock industries a bit into perspective. Agriculture is one of the top key economic industries in South Africa. We must never forget that, together with mining, transport, etc. And to me, the most important thing is agriculture is central to food security. We have more than 60 million people to feed. And just by the way, one of the very shocking statistics in South Africa related to agriculture is at least 13 million people go to bed hungry every night. That's a lot, because we may have national food security, but we must always think in terms of household food security. And the way we produce our animals and our product that is in demand is also playing a role there. The other one that I think put us on the map, agriculture, is, if you can remember, during the COVID is still on people's tongues, not so much as 2-3 years ago, but still. But during COVID, and we were following all the statistics, most industries had a massive contraction, massive contraction. Agriculture was the only one that's, due to the fact that it's so resilient, it was the only one, when the others contracted, that grew by 15%. Telling us how important this industry is for our country and for our people. Okay. The sector also supplements the food baskets as well as income of our subsistence farmers, of course. Next slide, Ernest. Okay. So 2 years ago, we now starting to let's zoom in a bit on the beef industry, which is what tonight is about. The beef cattle industry was estimated at more than 55 billion rand 2 years ago, né? And we've got more than 12 million cattle in South Africa, of which about 80% is beef, and the beef contributes approximately 82% to the red meat industry. So it's a very big industry. Okay. What's interesting in terms of the animal protein that we consume in South Africa, beef is second on the list. Nah? It's dominated by poultry. Almost half of all the animal protein is poultry, and about 26% is beef, and the rest is from the other species. The other thing that's very important, which is a big asset to South Africa, we are rich in our livestock genetic resources. We have a large and diverse gene pool, and we'll get to that later, how that assists us in terms of selection and to address our challenges. And this diversity, of course, when it comes to animal genetics, is one of the key ingredients that enable farmers to be resilient, to respond to change, like climate change, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. I thought maybe just to take you back, because you can never, we do think things on a continuous basis, whether we are farmers or politicians or scientists, whoever we are, just to take you back a bit. So cattle have been part of the lives of modern humans since their domestication more than 10 decades, no, 10,000 years ago. Nah? And so people have already started thousands of years ago to apply selection methods, to apply information and data in a way to refine the breeds to what they are today. And currently there's more than 250 recognized breeds throughout the world. And South Africa, like I said, like the rest of the world, we have breeds that are adapted to perform under a very wide range of environmental conditions. South Africa's from the Northern Cape, that's got not much food, that you need many hectares for one single cow, versus KZ in areas where there a lot of vegetation, a lot of food. The climate is very different. So we have very different range of areas, but also luckily different genetic makeups in our animals to enable farmers to use that very diverse environments. And very importantly, information and technology, some of which is very basic. I'm going to stay to the basic technologies and information kind of things tonight, to just show you what difference that can make. And that has anyway has become the cornerstones of the decision making of sound breeding programs that's really aimed to improve the genetic potential of our herds. Because you will see later in the talk, improving the genetic potential is one of our biggest priorities when it comes to beef breeding in South Africa. If you look at our beef industry is made of, it's dualistic of nature, about 58% commercial, and the rest is the emerging sectors. And South Africa has approximately 35,000, some say it's closer to 40,000 commercial farmers, about 250,000 emerging farmers, and about 3 million small scale, or some say subsistence farmers. And these are the people that need to feed our nation. And what's important, the commercial sector supplies around 75% of the animal products through vertically integrated feedlots. And towards the end, we will see why this is so important in terms of certain of the traits, like, for instance, feed efficiency and average daily gain, because that's related to sustainability and especially profitability, of course. Ish. Okay. Colleagues, can you still hear me?
Yes, yes, we can still hear you.
Okay, so thank you. Sorry, there was technology. I'm talking about technology, and then technology jumps in and just teaches us a lesson. The electronic technology, which is not my favorite. Just to show you in terms of the scale, if you look at 10-year average from what's that, around 2010 to 2020, you as our farmers produced close to 10 million tons of beef. Colleagues, that tells you there's a demand for your product. You are resilient. You are doing something right. You can make an earning, a profitable business out of beef production. Next slide, please, Ernest. Okay. Okay, we remember, colleagues, we are a net exporter of beef. Nah? I'm going to show you that we are also importing beef, but we are a net exporter of beef. That shows you your product is also highly in demand overseas, especially in the Middle East and some African countries. If you look at around 2022, we exported almost 2.5 billion rand of beef, whether frozen or fresh products, which shows you a lot of demand, a lot of opportunity, not just inside South Africa, our country, but also outside for your product. Next slide, please, Ernest. Okay, that just shows you some of the animals that we've imported from our neighboring countries. That's quite a lot now, 268,000. And I've already mentioned our major export markets include countries like Kuwait, Jordan, and the UAE. So they definitely a very high demand for high quality premium product. Sorry for that one. What's also very important, our beef industry, like other countries' industry, is very dynamic. So things change all the time, to which we must ensure that we are resilient. Just a quick one in terms of the profile and the strengths of our beef industry, this profile specifically. So we've got the commercial beef producer, into which the stud breeders are obviously sectioned into, and their production is relatively high and comparable to the developed countries. And they use basic as well as sophisticated breeding methods and technologies to be sustainable and competitive. And they use a lot, their production is generally based on synthetic and or crossbreeding. And then you have the emerging beef cattle farm sector that usually, as a rule, own or lease land, and their cattle generally consist of indigenous or crossbred or exotic type of animals. And then the communal beef cattle farmer that farm majorly on communal grazing land, and their cattle are mostly of the indigenous types. Next slide, please. So colleagues, let's jump to some of the challenges and opportunities. We'll highlight a few challenges, but I want to stick to the opportunities because that's what we need to grasp to take this industry forward. So I think one of the major challenges that we need to know, and that's probably not just for farming, for any business, is the increase in input and expenses in what we are doing as a farmer, for instance. And that increased input and expenses obviously contribute to the fact that it may reduce your profit margins, and eventually your sustainability. Underperforming, and this is the important one, underperforming and non-profitable animals due to poor or suboptimal genetic potential. And that, in a nutshell, is basically what this talk is about, is to try to convince everybody that we need to make use of basic and sometimes a bit more sophisticated technologies to address this problem. Because if you are sitting with animals that are underperforming, that are not profitable, that are of poor genetic quality, we are sitting with a problem. It then will be very difficult to service the market and also be profitable and sustainable at the end of the day. So things like reproduction rates, which by the way is probably the most important trait that we need to look at. Because if a cow doesn't calve, she's just costing you money. And so reproduction really important. Then we have mortalities. We have production efficiency. These are just to name but a few. Low calving percentages. And quite a few others that we'll get to soon and just touch on them. These are some of the challenges that we're sitting this that we really need to address. And the nice thing about it, many of these challenges can be addressed by using basic technology, not necessarily sophisticated technology. So many of these things we can really address to ensure that we are more sustainable and more profitable, and that we can, especially emerging farmers, that you can not just access the value chain and the market, but also sustain yourself in that market. Next slide, please. Okay, then of course, not going to go into all the detail. Other things that farmers, especially in the emerging sector, also struggle with: lack of appropriate infrastructure, equipment, poor access to technical market information and things. There's predation, there's stock theft, there's traceability, there's disease issues. So I always say to be a farmer, you really have to love what you're doing, because you're working hand in hand with nature. And if you look, predation is a nature thing. Disease management to a large degree is a nature thing. Climate change is a nature thing. And these are the things that impact a lot on farmers' ability to really be sustainable and profitable. And we must remember the food value chain is not the same as 100 years ago. It is getting more industrialized, more technical, and definitely more competitive, which is quite demanding. I'm just going to jump to, because I don't have too much time. One important one is we need to focus. Just one back, please, Ernest. Sorry. That's it. The commercialization of the emerging sector, that is really important. There's a lot of opportunity there. It's been, for instance, some of the market analysts have said that this sector could be underestimated by more than 20%. So, and the commercial sector itself, in terms of, I'll get you that at the end, in terms of collaboration, mentorship, and sharing resources and those things, they really have a huge role to play there. Next slide, please. That's it. Just a quick slide to show you how people have, and this is from 2024, and it's from BFAP publications, that they have the positive trend there is from the predictions made that from 2023, which is only 2 years ago, to the next couple of years till 2033, the prediction is that the beef market will grow by as much as 17%, which I think is a very positive message in terms of to stimulate the market and to also give farmers the confidence that their product is in high demand. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's some more challenges and some opportunities. So we really need to tap strongly in our genetic resources, including indigenous breeds like, let's say, Afrikaner, Nguni, and others. They are hardy, they're adapted, they've got the desired traits of economic and biological importance to sort of be relevant in different areas of our countries. And of course also, and the ARC is doing a lot of research on that, and my colleague Frans is also in this meeting, that if there's any questions, they're looking a lot of, doing a lot of research in terms of crossbreeding and the advantages of that. Okay, can I go to the next slide, please? Okay, so another challenge, which what the theme almost of this webinar is the implementation of the appropriate technologies that can address our challenges, and that is far from optimal. And performance recording data and information on genetic potential is really vital to make progress, né? And our biggest challenge probably, especially in the commercial, in the emerging sector, is this performance data, this information is absent in many cases. And remember, without information, you don't know whether you're going forwards or backwards. You really need information. And colleagues, it doesn't have to be sophisticated information. It must be basic information that's got a very powerful application when it comes to breeding and selection to be more profitable. Next slide, please. Okay, so I thought just to show you this. So what is the rationale? What is one of the reasons? We know we're doing performance recording and those things because we want to be more profitable and sustainable, and we want to select for the desired traits. So why don't we do it visually? And this is the rationale behind performance recording. Although structural efficiency and visual appraisal of animals are important, the bottom line is you cannot see genetics for all the traits because looks can be very deceiving, and only looks is only a very small portion of the performance puzzle. If you look at those 3 cows there, I'm not going to ask you questions now, but just think in your mind, if you had to pick one, which one would you think in terms of performance when it gets to traits that are of economic and biological importance? Which ones do you think were of the 3 were good or bad? I'm going to give you the answer. All 3 those animals, although phenotypically, meaning physical characteristics, they look very different. In definitely different breeds. It's a Drakensberger, South Devon in the middle, and of course Brahman on the right. So they're different breeds. All 3 of them, although they look very different, were the best cows. We call them elite cows at one point in their entire breed in the whole of South Africa at some point. I think it was about probably the last 3-4 years. According to the performance traits, that's of economic and biological importance. Okay, so yeah, that's the rationale behind performance testing. You cannot see all the performance. In fact, most of the performance traits you cannot see with your eye. That's why you need to collect the performance data, turn it into information. Next slide, please. And there's just another one. At the top, colleagues, your animals is not on a genetic level. DNA is basically genetics. No? On a genetic level, your animals are more than 99% similar. No? So can you see, although they're so very similar on a genetic level, they're also very different. And the bottom line, the questions again is, can you see traits like feed conversion ratio, intercalving period, and things like that, milk production, average daily gain? You cannot see that. And it makes it even so much more essential to test for it since your animals are genetically so similar to one another. Next slide, please. Okay. So colleagues, this is the game, if I can use that word, in which farmers are very well resilient, if I can use that word. They are confronted to exercise or to almost combine nature and nurture to ensure that their animals perform very well. So on the one hand, the performance is a function of both nature and nurture. Ne? So what is nurture? Nurture is your nutrition, your environment, the temperature, the humidity, the disease prevalence, and how you manage your animals, etc. That's nurture. So nurture is what's around the animal and the human intervention. And then nature, on the other hand, is all about the genetics of your animal, the DNA. Ne? And animals and humans can, although share a high degree of genetic similarity, they can still be phenotypically, in other words, in terms of observable traits, although they're genetically very similar, they can be phenotypically very different. So it's all about the complex interplay between the genes and the environment. Né? And if we want to improve our animals, we need to consider both genetics and the environment. Okay. And that one, the geneticists always use this. Observable traits or phenotype is the genotype, the genetics, plus our environment. And we address both farmers also and scientists, both of those things to ensure we come up with the most desirable phenotype. Next slide, please, Ernest. Okay, I just want to give you a wow fact. It will just be this one slide talking about the genetics of our animals. So cattle have, us as humans, we have 46 chromosomes. We all know that. Cattle have 60 chromosomes in one single cell. And cattle have around 22,000 genes. That's their nature. These are the genes in collaboration, if I can put it that way, with nurture, with the environment, that make the animals perform, that make the animals who they are. Okay. And if you think about all the genes and all the chromosomes, all the genetics, a single calf from a bull and a cow may inherit one of more than 1,000,000 trillion possible combinations of chromosomes, recombined chromosomes. What does that sentence mean? That sentence means that it illustrates the almost immeasurable ability of nature, in our animals in this case, to create genetic variation from which we as farmers or scientists can exploit that variation. It just re-emphasizes the scope for exploiting it. Also, since it's embedded in genetic makeup, we have almost an endless amount of possibilities from which we can choose and select. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just some of the example. We're now talking about the genetic part, the DNA, and how that technology is used to assist farmers. That's to the advantage of the farmers. I'm not going to go through all of them. These are some of the applications. Probably one of the most frequent one is parentage verification. That's used for pedigree and registration of stud animals, but also for selection. It doesn't necessarily have to be stud animals. You need to know who are the parents of particular calves, because you need to make selection decisions based on who are the parents. And of course, DNA genetic all the time, like at the ARC, at the Animal Genetics do that on it. They use that technology to look at, do our animals, okay, like, do they have
Dr. Ben? Dr. Ben, can you hear us?
I hear
your
you.
line, yes, your line was a little bit crackling. Yeah, but now we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry for that. It shows that, yeah, I've got good reception here. It's strange. Apologies for that. Again, not my favorite technology is the electronic one. Okay. So it's used a lot to identify beneficial genetics in animals, things that's related to tenderness and muscling in animals and things like that. It's also used to look at the levels of genetic diversity. That's very important. It looks at, are our animals genetically diverse? In other words, have they got a lot of genetic diversity, or are they inbred? We do sometimes come to animals that are inbred. The minute animals are inbred, it means they have less genetic diversity. They are less fit, and they are less adaptable to environmental conditions. Okay, so then that will also tell industry or a farmer that there's restricted gene flow. You need to do something about it. There's not enough genetic diversity in a herd, for instance, or in a population of cattle. And so you need to bring in new blood. Next slide, please, Ernest. Okay, there's of course, I'm not going to go into all of them. There's also, of course, genetic tests that can be done, which is done on a daily basis to look at bad genes that some of the cattle may be carrying, Pompey's disease, curly calf syndrome, things like that. And I'm going to jump to the last one, which is one of the more sophisticated technologies. So there are technologies that exploit the genetic makeup of your animals, of your cattle, and we call it genomics, where they look at the information in the genetics, and that is related to the performance of those animals, performance traits eventually. So it's genomics, and it tells you animals with a particular genetic makeup will, for instance, have higher fertility or higher feed efficiency or things like that, or vice versa. Okay, so that's also a very powerful, sophisticated technology that's a tool of the farmer to assess the genetic potential of their cattle. Next slide, Ernest. Okay, so let's just put then the more basic performance recording technology. How does it fit into the bigger picture? Just to summarize, why do we need to record performance data? Like how much did the weaner calf weigh when it was weaned? How often did the cow calf? That's reproduction. What was the feed efficiency of a particular animal? What was the average daily gain? In other words, how much weight and muscle did an animal gain on a daily basis, and many other traits. And like I said a few slides ago, we have to measure that because you cannot quantify it visually. You cannot see that. And you need that information to make selection and management decisions. Ne? Otherwise, you don't know if you're going forward or backwards. And some of the traits recorded reflect both weak and strong characteristics. Ne? So you need to get rid of the weak ones and obviously focus on the strong ones. And the data is crucial. This kind of data of performance data, very basic data, ne? Like I've already mentioned, for enhancing the productivity and profitability of our animals. Next slide, please, Ernest. The other thing that I just want to also bring to your attention that the geneticists also taught me, people like Frans and the others, you need a balanced approach when you select for particular traits. If you focus too strongly on one particular trait and sort of like ignore some of the other traits, that will inadvertently negatively impact the other traits. Okay, one particular one is for many years across the world, especially in Europe, with the dairy animals, people focus very strongly on milk production, and that obviously negatively impacted on other traits of those animals like longevity. Okay, we must also remember that information this is a cornerstone also for generation of more sophisticated technologies like genomics, which is now already throughout the world and even used in South Africa as a tool to improve our genetic potential of our animals. Next slide, please, Ernest. Colleagues, yeah, we're getting, I think I've got about 10 minutes left because we only started about 10 past. So now I need to, we know the importance of performance recording, né? Documenting those traits. And then and I've said, like many other people will tell you, it's so important because for the sustainability and profitability, etc. The bottom line, then you can ask the question, okay, so what is this impact? How profitable is it? How powerful is it? How is it this really going to help me? Because at the end of the day, your animal is your income. Your animal is the money. And here are some examples of what can be achieved in terms of efficiency. If you can just press the button, Ernest, thank you. Look here, this is one example. I'm going to go to a South African conditions just now. In the USA in the late 50s, it took 8 pigs to produce 1,000 pounds of pork, and today 5 pigs, 3 pigs less. 3 pigs less. In terms of the next button, please, Ernest. In terms of chickens, also in the United States, there, oh, it's a bit low. There we are. In terms of poultry, also from the late 1950s, the poultry feed efficiency was improved 250%. You can imagine the monetary value attached to that. In South Africa, as far as I remember, I can be a bit off. I think we slaughter more than 3 million chickens per month. So you can imagine if you had such an animal that's been improved so well in terms of the monetary value of the savings. You're talking about not millions, you're talking about billions of rands. Next slide, Ernest. Okay, let's get closer to South Africa. Ne? So this is a graph of real data from 1960 to 2000 of all the animals of different breeds that was on the national database. All animals that were performance recorded. Look at the gain in, and this is a very important trait of economic importance, the winning weight of our animals. Through selection and the application of basic management practices and selecting for the better producers, the winning weight was improved with 52 kilograms in 40 years. If you consider how many winners were produced in those years, that amounts, if you look at the per kilogram per winner, that amounts to not millions, but billions of rands of gain for industry. And that industry is you as our farmers. Next slide, please. Okay. Another one. So although this is just a rough estimate, this a farmer can typically make, you can press some more button there, Ernest, one more, two more, and one more. That's it. So you can make one back. You can make the calculations. They need refinement, of course, and factors come in. One back, Ernest. One slide back. That's it. Just keep it there. Thank you. So and I mean, you need to look at, you can refine this, but if you want a quick glance of what kind of monetary return on investments a particular approach can make, you can, let's say you have a 100 cow herd and the weaner price, let's say it's around 35 Rand a kilo. Your current calving rate is, say, 65%, and your average weaner weight in your herd is 180. So if you increase the calving percentage with 10%, and you increase the weaner weight with 10 kilograms, roughly you will make almost 90,000 Rand more gross income. And to do that, you need to select the better performers and get rid of the poor performers in terms of these particular traits. Just as an example. Next slide, please, Ernest. Okay. Again, in terms of return on investment in scientific technologies, they have showed that in South Africa, as well as in the rest of the world, the return on investment, which is a measure of profitability, in general scientific technologies in our industry, has been shown to range from 3.1 to be as high as 10.1. Some people, the lower line says that it can be as high as 18 to 1. But let's stick to the 3.1 and to the 10.1. That means for every Rand that's invested in this technology and in this the scientific technologies and performance recording, the return is 3 times what you invested. That should, for any farmer, be a very, very good motivation to really adopt this basic performance technologies to be more profitable. Next slide, please. Okay, again, this is South Africa. Let's just look at 2 real examples that's been published. The first one is the NBRIS, that's a National Beef Recording and Improvement Scheme of the ARC, and I'm going to show you that data. which with the main mandate of the scheme is to do performance recording and its applications to ensure that farmers are more sustainable and more profitable. So they did a study from all the data from 1970 to 2014. So it's not that long time ago. And they showed by investing in the NBRIS and also in the associated research and technology transfer, the rate of return was almost 32%. And the Economist published this probably about 5 years ago already, and they showed and they also motivated as a very strong motivation for maintaining and even growing performance recording. Another example on this slide is the Beef Genomics project, with a main mandate obviously to enhance the global competitiveness of our populations using, in this case, cutting-edge, high-level genomic technologies. The first one, the NBRIS, was basic technologies like weighing your calves, recording when the cows calve, etc. The BGP one was more using genetic component that we spoke about a few slides earlier. And they showed there with a BGP, the first phase that's already finished. I just want to remind you that we are already in BGP second phase. But in the first phase, they showed that the benefit cost ratio was more than 3, which means the benefits generated for farmers that invested in the BGP was 3 times the cost. That should be a very, very strong motivator to invest and to use these kind of technologies. Next slide, Ernest. Right. Okay. So we are 5 minutes from the end. So the take-home message is, which hopefully we will all take hands and agree on. There's a significant scope for growth and development of our beef markets. If you look at right in the beginning, what does our market look like? What are all the opportunities, not just nationally, but also internationally? Eh? Because there's a lot of pressure to produce more from less. That means the market demands are becoming more and more, and it's more stringent and it's more tough. So we need to really make use of all our resources to make sure we enhance the efficiency. Okay. And then information and technology is really vital. Without it, you cannot position yourself in the market. And it's a prerequisite if you really want to stay competitive and maintain your position in the market. And of course, not just addressing your challenges, but to grasp the opportunities. And we touch on many of the opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities, massive in the beef sector, in the beef industry, in terms of profitability, expanding it, etc. And the other important one is the performance data is also crucial for making decisions. Even if it's very basic data, it helps farmers to be more sustainable. And at the end of the day, we need to improve the genetic potential of the national herd because times change, climate change, the economy change, socio-economy factors change, disease, all those kind of things change. So we have to, your animal's genetics cannot be the same, for instance, as 500 years ago. We have to change and adapt due to the pressure of nature and nurture. Okay, next slide. Okay. What's also important, and this comes from the farmer, I always say to farmers, I think scientists, we learn a lot more from farmers than you learn from us. That is, and I'm not saying this lightheartedly, because if you look at the performance data and the information that is generated by our farmers, it forms a basis all over the world of many of the scientific innovations used by industry, from performance indexes, breeding values, genomics, all those things. And that's thanks to the farmers that record these traits And that information is then transformed into a very powerful tool. And we've shown the second point there, investing in performance recording, even the basic one, and related technologies have been shown to yield very positive monetary returns. And I think that should be a big motivation for farmers to really use that. Okay. So the last point here, I think there's one slide after this. The last point on this slide, we really need to up our game when it comes to communication, when it comes to information dissemination like we do tonight. And remember, farmers, it also comes from your side to us as scientists. Like I said, we learn more from you than you probably learn from us. So we really need to exchange all this information, and we need to adopt the technologies to your benefits. We need to build stronger links and cooperation between the different production sectors. And I'll show you why from on to the next slide, why we need to have stronger cooperation. Next slide, please. Again, Ernest, press the button. Another one. Okay, so this one, these are two quotes from farmers that we've spoken to. That's actually in their language. I said, remember that over 90% of bulls at the stud breeder, for instance, in the commercial sector, cells go to the commercial and emerging farmers, and cross-pollination, support, collaboration between all these sectors and the stakeholders is vital. And these farmers or the breeders are the stud breeders' bread and butter now because they buy their product. So the stud breeder has an obligation to supply, this is in the farmer's language, to supply the correct genetic material. That's tested material that's been performance tested, né, to these farmers in line with their breeding objectives. I think the next slide is the second last slide. One more. Okay, that is actually the last slide. Colleagues, there's additional slides that I'm not going to touch on now, the annexure slides that talks in more detail about the different traits, the National Beef Recording and Improvement Scheme. What is the word? Sorry, my English, if I'm tired, my English gets worse and worse. But we divide our trait testing into 4 phases, and this is the annexure of these slides that you can go in more detail. What are the traits to be measured? Why are they measured? When are they measured? Etc. On which animals are they measured? And the kind of answers they give you. But I'm not going to touch on this now in terms of time restrictions. Perhaps maybe allow more time now. You can always contact me and my colleagues if you have additional questions on the annexure slides. It's only 4 or 5. But yeah, Ernest, that is my long story. I don't know if there are any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Dr. Ben. Colleagues, I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Those ones who want to ask questions orally, please raise up your hand and then unmute yourself. I'm just gonna go through the inbox to see if there's anyone who left in the question there. In the meantime, colleagues, you can prepare yourself for questions or comments. Just gonna go through the comments in the box. If there's any. Okay. See if there's any question. I see a lot of comments. Okay, most of the questions are asking about if are we going to share the slides after the presentation or not. And then I see a question from is Dudley Mulloy is asking, please explain beef genomic project technology, again, is for uninitiated. Market doesn't, okay, he goes again and asks, market does not, sorry, it's moving around now. Some people are making other comments as I'm talking, as I'm reading this one, and I cannot read it correct. So market does not incentivize genetics diversity, as there are preference for certain breeds. Any comments based on that? He's asking, the market does not
if I can
incentivize
come in,
diversity.
if I can come in here, Ernest.
Yes. Yes, you can jump in, Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben?
Ernest, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, there you go. Okay, I'm back. Technology again. So I'm assuming we're talking about feedlot. We know the feedlot pay for some breeds per kilo more than others because they do their calculations. They know that some breeds grow faster than others, so they make more money. They are more efficient. Okay. The big thing is in terms of if you do performance testing, you can, and especially crossbreeding, and you can talk to my colleagues as well, you can definitely address some of the challenges that's associated with the fact that the market supposedly don't prefer certain breeds. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question. The bottom line is if we do performance testing and you select, you can within your breed already make a big increase in efficiency of those animals. The big thing is why that I outlined some in one of the slides. In many cases, there's a lack or absence of performance data. So if you don't have any data, it's very difficult to make inroads and to improve. You can only improve if you have data that you can use as a base from which to make decisions. Okay, sorry, we can talk long about this one, but perhaps they can contact me afterwards and we can talk about it even more.
Okay, let me just take one and we'll see if we still have time. Gift, I'm going to unmute your mic and then you can ask your question or make your comment orally. Gift? It seems like we are struggling to get Gift on the line. Let's try Lawrence. Lawrence, your mic is unmuted. Can you ask your question? Yeah, it seems like we are struggling with the oral questions, but in the meantime, I'm just going to read through another question from my colleague here. I'm attending this meeting from the headquarters of ZZ2. My colleague has a question. Is asking what are the factors that are affecting the calving percentage in livestock? Dr. Ben?
Yeah, calving percentage.
Yes.
That comes back to reproduction. So there's many factors that affect that. In terms, one of the big ones, remember we spoke about nurture and nature. Nurture is a big part of calving percentage in terms of how we manage our herds. Is there enough food? What were the breeding seasons? How did we keep control of proper breeding season? Did we have good bulls, fertile bulls? There's a lot of factors that come into the trait of calving percentage. A lot of it is management, and of course, some of it is nature. Nature will be, for instance, when the bull, you can't see it, for instance. Remember, I said you can't see all the traits, you can't see genetics always. in most cases, in fact. But let's say the bull is not very fertile. There's something wrong with his semen or something like that, or it's not very fertile. That may be a factor. It may also be the management factors in terms of the breeding seasons, how long was the bull there, etc., etc. So there's quite many of this, and I think my colleague Frans can also come in if he wants to, in terms of, because this is one of the most, by the way, it's a very good question, one of the most important factors that affect your sustainability and profitability of a farmer. Can you hear me, colleagues?
Yes, we can.
I hope so. Okay.
I'm struggling to see if Frans can be able to speak orally, and I cannot see him on the meeting. And
I think he's just calling me on my cell phone, so I think he also got a digital or electronic technology problem.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like other people cannot
Yes.
speak orally. In the meantime, I've got a very interesting question in the box. I'm just going to read it out.
Well, okay.
Luyanda is asking.
Okay.
It's saying in slide
Okay.
number 20.
Okay.
She asked.
Thanks. Sorry. Say again, Ernest.
Oh, sorry. So Luyanda is asking a question. She is asking in slide number 20. Double muscling was identified as one of the genetic markers linked with profitability.
Yes.
How is that so? She's asking. I think farmers tend to run away from it because of calving difficulties.
Yes. Good question. Some farmers, if you double muscling is not necessarily a bad trait. It must be managed properly. Remember, there's some breeds with a lot more double muscling than others. We know that. But if it's selected for and managed in a balanced effect, then it can be. Some farmers will tell you they manage it and they select in a balanced manner for it to ensure that they have more meat. And many in some of the breeds, the double muscling is also accompanied by a higher, what do they call it, a higher carcass yield once slaughtered. So yes, it can be a problem if it's not controlled and managed well in terms of, like she said, yes, when the calves are born and they're too big and things like that. But it can also be for breeds. Some of the farmers, when it's well managed, it can be an asset in terms of weight of the animals and the number of meat, the amount of meat on the animal. But it must be well managed and selected for. So, Ernest, if I may just say, Frans just told me, he says they muted, they can't speak. That's why he couldn't answer you.
Okay, I see. Because I've been trying to unmute them, but I'm struggling also from my side. I suggest anyone who has got a question, just write it in the box and then I'll read it out for Dr. Ben. Ben, I've got another question which is very interesting.
Sure. Yes.
She's asking, is Luyanda again, as a winner calf production farmer, is it important for me to do performance testing, or can I just rely on buying bulls that have been performed, have been all tested already for performance?
Yeah, very good question. I think she's already made very good management decisions if she says she's got performance tested bulls who's the fathers of the calves. Okay. If you have a performance tested bull, it's got a paper that will tell you if it's a stud bull, for instance, it will tell you, for instance, what is the breeding value for particular traits like weaning weight. But remember, weaning weight is not just from one parent, it's from both parents. So you also need to have the right mothering abilities and things like that from the cow. But for me, we always advise the farmers, even if you have a stud bull, for instance, performance recording, the basic stuff is relatively cheap to conduct. So still make weigh those calves so you can see. Remember, a particular bull or a cow, not all his calves or her calves will be perfect, if I can put it in that language. You will you will have, we are as humans, some of your children will be musical and the others like me can't sing 2 words. You know what I'm saying? So even if they have the right documentation, you should still performance test the offspring, because the more records you have, the more powerful and accurate selection you can do on the offspring. And especially when it comes to Winnie, if she's a winner production, that's one of the major industries in South Africa where animals are, winners are being bought at auctions or wherever, because remember about 75–80% of those winners go to feedlots and they produce the meat that we end up buying. Thanks.
Thank you. Another question. Let me just go to it again. I'm losing some of the questions because people are still throwing in a lot of questions, and then they are very long questions. Another question, or maybe a comment. So someone is asking here, what advice can you give to me as someone who's studying livestock farming?
Okay. So that person is studying livestock farming and I need to give him or her advice.
Yes.
Okay. It's not just because I have a passion for it, but also because I believe there's a lot of room to improve. Use your studies, use your knowledge, and ensure that that knowledge goes to the farmer. Train them, mentor them, work with them, but also learn from the farmers. Remember, scientists don't have all the answers. We learn more from them than they learn from us. Use that knowledge and do the most important part is information dissemination. Get the knowledge to the farmers and make sure that their knowledge get to you, because once you take hands with them, that all that can be combined to take this industry to the next level.
Yeah. The other question from is Puti. I would like to know if ARC have any digital resource for record keeping similar to the book they issue to the farmers for cow performance record keeping.
Yeah, we do. We have a system in the beef scheme, for instance, where we assist farmers to record a whole range of performance traits. So you must just call us or email us. Call is even quicker, and then we can talk about it. But yes, we have a system where we assist the farmers to record many different traits. And what we do is, and that's the nice part, I said at the last slide, you can have data without information, but you cannot have information without data. So we put that data into information and then onto reports that go back to the farmers that tell you for specific traits, whatever that trait may be, is the animal performing good or not so good? And then you use that as a selection decision in terms of how to go forward. Thanks.
Ashel Mainage is asking, with over 40% of national herd in the hands of communal farmers, do you believe performance recording can improve subsistence producers' contribution to the formal market?
That's a very good question, but in my mind also a very valid statement, most certainly. Remember, if you want to access the market, especially, let's say you want to access the formal market, and you want to access the feed, let's say you decide you're going to focus on the feedlot industry, you want to produce calves for them. You're going to have to produce calves that perform, those feedlot guys, sorry, not guys, the companies, they do their calculations. They know, because one of their major cost drivers is average daily gain of the animal in the feedlot. In an extreme environment, example, just a hypothetical extreme environment, you get in a calf that grows very fast and it eats relatively little. That's in a fairy tale world exactly what you want. Versus you get a calf in and it stays in a feedlot for a year. They will never allow that. I'm just using a hypothetical example. It eats a lot of food, but it stays there for a long time and it doesn't gain a lot. They don't want an animal like that. So from the emerging guys, there's a lot of room by doing recording to improve traits that are wanted or desired by the market, to give you access to the market, to ensure they buy your animals. You have to record the performance of your animals. Not everything, you don't have to jump on day one to go to very sophisticated technologies, because it's been shown that even the basic technologies, the recording of simple things like reproduction, weaning weight and things like that already makes a big difference in the profitability of a farmer. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to just take 2 more questions. The other question is, can artificial insemination be a way to go for communal farmers? And what are the average costs thereof?
Yeah, the ARC has got a we have a germplasm and cryopreservation unit that serves, especially focuses on the emerging farmers, in terms of artificial insemination, testing of the semen of bulls, all sorts of things. As a rule, in the beef industry, AI is low. In the dairy industry, it's extremely high again. But in the beef industry, most of the calves, I don't have the number from the top of my head, but I will say at least 90, maybe 95% of calves produced from beef cattle comes from bulls, not from their semen through artificial insemination. But yes, it is an option. It is an option. You can buy expensive, or I'm not sure how much that costs. She can contact us, and then we can link her up with our AI people. But you can, for instance, buy semen from a very well-known, very high-performance tested bull, for instance, to up your game with a particular trait. If you know, for instance, shoo, my weaning weight is not what it should be. And remember, the bull is the most important piece of genetics in the herd, because although there may be 100 cows, let's say in a fairy tale world, all 100 cows calf. That never happens, because nothing in the world is 100%. But let's say all of them calf. All those calves come from different cows, but all of them come from one bull. Can you see how important the bull is? So you need a high performance tested bull. If you cannot afford a high performance tested bull, then yes, AI can be an option. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Ben. And one more question. He's actually asking about the breeding program. How important is the breeding program for someone who's running a livestock enterprise? And what are the things to look out for if you want to formulate a breeding program?
Yeah, to answer that, I'm going to talk for an hour. But just to tell her, if we have courses, because it's very extensive, the answer, but we have courses that we present to look at that in terms of breeding program. A breeding program encompasses many different things, from nurtured. Remember, we spoke about nurtured and natured. From which animals, which breed you have, where in the country are you, what is the carrying capacity of the farm, for instance? Are you feeding them extra, or are you just extensively farming? What breed is it? How many cows have you got? What is the calving percentage, for instance? How many breeding seasons have you got? Who is your market? All those kind of things. She's more than welcome, or whoever, to contact us, and I can link her up with our scientists like Frans and others, that's highly specialized to answer questions like this in detail for them with no problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like we are running behind with time, unfortunately. We're just going to have to leave it here. Dr. Ben, thank you very much. There's a whole lot of comments in the comment section. People are saying they appreciate your presentation. It was really an eye-opener. So this is in line with one of our pillars as the Red Meat Industry Services, which is to profitability and sustainability of the livestock enterprises of the farmers, so that they can be sustainable in their own enterprises. So we really appreciate your contribution, Dr. Ben. That was an eye-opener. And I hope most of the people who are here, the farmers and the industry role players, they really learned one or two things from your presentation. And it was so very unfortunate that Mr. Frans was not able to join or to contribute via orally due to some technical errors. But we really appreciate the contribution that you already gave us, Dr. Ben. And there are some people who are asking already that are you willing to share your slides?
Yes, no problem. I can send it to whoever, or even to you, Ernest, or whoever. I can put it in PDF format and email it to you. No problem. You are always welcome. We are just a phone call away, remember.
Absolutely.
And if I may, at this point also, thank you so much, Ernest, and the RMIS for the big role you guys are playing to take this industry to the next level. Much appreciated.
Absolutely, we are really honored. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who attended today's session. Just for your information, we have this type of session on a monthly basis. We invite people with expertise like Dr. Ben in the industry so that they can come and share the information. As part of our role players, this is part of our mandate is to transfer skill and knowledge to the farmers so that they can farm profitably, and then they can be able to contribute meaningfully to the red meat or to the formal red meat value chain. So there's gonna be another webinar that is coming next month. Just look out on our website, Facebook, LinkedIn to see what is the topic and who is the guest for our next webinar. As for today, thank you very much, Rea Leboa. Let's meet again in the next topic. Thank you very much. Goodbye to all of you.
Thank you. Kiali Bucha. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.